This is Dan with 123Muse, and in this video we're going to take a look at how the panel effects works. Panel effects is a great little widget that Chris created. It's great for things like showing off your team members of your business and having a picture of them and some animated text that comes over them. There's a bunch of different animations. Here I've dragged one onto the screen, and this is a demo of one of them. And in your panel effects folder in your library, you'll have the panel effects. The top part will be the actual widgets, and then the bottom part you've got a sample of each of those widgets. So this is the sample of the cover push, and they all work the same. The animations are different, but the setup is the same for all of them. Now Chris made this, and he's a great coder, and it works really well. But just like me, I had a hard time getting to grips with this one a little, and once you figure out how it works, then it becomes very straightforward and simple. But without that little bit of knowledge, then it can be quite frustrating. So I'm going to go into this now, and while we're talking about it, I want you to just keep in mind the biggest thing to remember with panel effects is to remember that it's all about nested buttons. So it's all about nesting buttons, one inside the other. And we'll see how that works in just a sec. So this demo one, I'm going to expand out the different parts of it. So it's made up with a few different sections. And I'm going to switch to my layers panel and take a look inside this layers panel, and we can see here that starting from, actually I'll start from the inside out. Starting from the very inside, here I have a text panel. Next up, I've actually got the actual widget itself. These are sitting inside, you can see this in the layers panel, these are sitting inside a button. And this button has a plain fill inside of it. That button is sitting inside another button. You can see now I've gone up one layer and we're in another button. And that button has a fill, but this is filled with a picture that is scaled to fill and positioned top and center. And that button is sitting inside another button, and that button is what holds it all together. Now, why do we use buttons? Well, it's just a case that this works better with the way that the coding works, and you can put things inside a button, whereas you can't put things straight inside a regular panel. So that's basically why we use buttons. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and basically try and replicate this sample. So first of all, I'm going to go over to my widget. I'm going to open the buttons. I'm going to grab a state button, and I'm going to drop that on there. And of course it doesn't look anything like what we're after right now. So I'm going to drag it out to about the size that I want it. I'm going to square it off, take those curved corners off. I'm going to change the fill to transparent, so that's basically so it's got nothing in it. Now I'm going to select and delete the parts that were inside that button, so now it's just a plain button. Okay, at this point there's still another thing that I'm going to make sure to do. I click on the states, and each button can have a normal state, as we've seen this states panel, a normal state, rollover state, mouse down, and active. Well, I don't want those to be interfering and doing anything. I just want the animation to be what I want it to be. So as I click in that rollover, you can see by default it's got this grey colour as its rollover state. So I'm going to click on rollover, click the little garbage can, and go down to each of these just in case any of these have got any other states. So now this has got the same state for each part of it, from rollover, mouse, and active. Once that's done, I find that the easiest way to do it is to select that button, and I'm going to hold Command and C to copy it, and then Command and V, this is on a Mac, to paste that. I'm going to resize that button a little bit smaller, drop that inside of the main button, and I'm going to select that inner button copy it, paste it, make that a little smaller again, and drop that one inside there as well. And I've lined these up top left because when I resize everything to be the same size, it just makes it a little bit easier. Okay, so now if we look at our sections of this layer, we can see that it is now the same as the sample image that we had. So in our sample we have this main state button, another one inside it with the image in it, another button inside that with just a color fill, and inside that we have a text layer. So the only thing left to do here is for me to add the text layer. So I'm going to select the text element and text tool, and I'm going to drag, and you see that inner button. You can see how that inner button has gone to a slightly thicker, bolder blue line. Well, that's showing me that the text box that I'm putting now is actually going to be sitting right inside of that button. So I'm just going to type in text, and I'm just going to change this to white text, increase the size of it a little, and that's that. So that's ready to go now. So if we take a look again at our layers panel, now I can see that my text is sitting right inside of the inner state button, and that is just the same as our sample here. So now what I'm going to do is, at this point, I'm going to put the widget in there. So I'm going to switch over to my library. I'm going to grab the panel effects, and remember the bottom ones that say sample, these are all samples of them. The top ones are the actual widget, so I'm going to drag that widget, and I'm going to drag that inside of the innermost button. And you can see that the lines have gone bold, have showed up as bold around this, so that shows me that I'm dropping this right inside it. Okay. Now we can see that inside the options for this widget, I have something called a holder panel name, a catch-on panel name, and an image panel name. So we'll just take a look and figure out what those are. And we'll do that by going over and taking a look at our sample button, our sample panel effects. So to do this, and this is quite an important thing, is this enables us to basically give different IDs for each of our buttons, and those names that we saw inside those options, those are the IDs that are going to be attached to the button. And the beauty of that is that by naming each button or each panel something different, I could have an unlimited amount of different animations. They don't all have to be the same. So I could use the cover push on this one. If I go to my library, I could use rotate X on another and two-step on another, and they will all animate differently. And you'll see how this happens in just a second. So let's take a look and see how those naming IDs are attached to the button. To do that, I'm going to click into character styles. And in my character styles, you see that I've already got some made up. Content wrap, image panel, panel holder, and text panel. And if that seems like a bit of deja vu, that's because it is, because our widget, those are the names that we needed for the widget. So if I click and select the outermost button, you can see that that one is called panel holder. The next one is called image panel, and the next one is called text panel. Now the other one that's called content wrap, you don't have to worry about that. That's not anything that is necessary for you to change. So the only three that we need to worry about and think about is the text panel, the image panel, and the panel holder. Now what I could do is I could just select my outermost button and click, what was this one? This was panel holder, and click panel holder, and it would apply that ID that is from the sample one to this one. However, if I wanted to use a different animation, if I didn't want to use the same animation, and I just selected everything to be the same, so I made all the names of the buttons in this panel the same as the buttons in this panel here, well, the animations would be the same, because one animation, the top animation, would be pulling those names into it, and any names that had the same, any buttons that had the same name would show the same animation. So for each of these, you've got to create a new set. For each new animation, you need to really create a new set of names. Now, those names could be anything, but for sake of argument, I'm going to make them very simple. So this first one here, I've selected the outermost button here. I'm going to click inside my graphic styles, and I'm going to click on the bottom. When I hover over this, you see it says here, create a new style from the attributes applied. I'm going to click on that, and you see now that a new graphic style has been added that just has the name of style. I'm going to double click in that. I'm not going to worry about what it says down here, the style settings, but now here I can rename this to whatever I want it to be. One caveat to that is don't start a name or use a name that is just a number. Make sure that you use a text name. So I'm going to call this one simply A. Then I'm going to go to my next button. I'm going to do the same thing. Click here. It's created a new style for it. I'm going to call this one B. Click to my third one, create another new one, name this one C. And while those are fresh in mind, I'm going to add those to the correct places inside the widget options. Now, the first one here is going to be the holder panel name. That is A. Something maybe Chris one day will switch around, but the next part is the caption name, which is actually the third button. So it's going to be C. And the third one, the image panel, is actually the second button, so this is going to be B. So just so that you get those right, the holder panel name is the outermost button. The image panel name, which is the third option down, but is actually the second button. And the caption panel name, which is the second option down in the widget, is actually the innermost button, or the third button. So just remember that so you get that order right. Okay, then I'm going to click out of that, and now I'm going to set up these panels. So the outer button is just the holder, so I don't need to do anything to that. The second button, I'm going to click into that, and remember the sample one had a picture in it. So we're going to go to fill, click on the fill. I'm going to add an image. This is an image from Adobe stock that I've got. It's still got the watermark on it because this is just for demonstration purposes. So I'm going to double click that. I'm going to change that to scale to fill. Put that, and you can see that it doesn't make any difference whether I put it top center position or top middle, so you can leave it the way it is, or I could put it there, it doesn't matter. Next, I'm going to go and alter the innermost button. So selecting that, and this one I'm going to give it a solid fill. Now any one of these could be a solid fill, or it could be a picture fill. You could switch it around. It doesn't have to be this way. This is just the way we're making this particular one. You could choose to do it any way you wanted. So for this, I'm going to select a color. I'll select this orangey color. The text, I shall just quickly change that text to white. And Christopher would not be happy if I didn't make sure that it was Proxima Nova, so we've changed it to that. And what I'm going to do now is I'd like to centralize that text box inside the innermost button. So first of all, I'm going to stretch out that innermost button by selecting it. I'm going to stretch it out so it's approximately the same as the one in the sample. Then I'm going to go to my layers panel, and I can see that that innermost button is selected. I'm going to hold down my command key, and I'm going to select the text layer also. So now those two are selected. Now I'm going to go to align. I'm going to centrally align it horizontally and vertically, and so that box is now nice and centered. Okay, now I can close up this panel So I'm going to close this part up so it goes just inside. You see where those blue lines are? Just on the inside of the innermost button. Now I'm going to select the outermost button and bring that into size. There we go. I'm going to do the same. I'm going to, with this sample one, I'm going to bring that back in as well. And now we're ready to preview the button. So let's take a quick preview of this. And here we have it. Here's the original. So we have the picture when the mouse goes over. The the innermost button comes over with the text on it. And now we're going to go into my one, and we can see that my one does the same. So we can see that that setup, that is how the setup needs to be done in order for these animations to work. So we'll take a quick look at this again, just to go over it again. I'm going to expand my panel just so we can go over it again. So I'll close the sample button and we'll just look at my panel. So we can see that my panel is 3 buttons, one inside of the other. And then what I've done is I've put the text and the actual widget inside the 3rd button. What I've also done is when I've made those buttons, I've made sure by going into the states, I've made sure I first of all selected the first button and I made sure that all the states were cleared by clicking on them, and if there was anything in them, clicking the garbage can and removing any states from that. Once I've done that, then I've created those buttons, I've nested them one in the other, and I've gone and I've named them by going into my graphic style and creating a graphic style for each of those buttons. And once I've created that graphic style, I've then gone into the widget and added that graphic style into the appropriate place inside the widget options. And again, I'll just go over the appropriate place again. The outermost button goes in the holder panel name, the first option. The innermost button goes in the caption panel name, which is the second option. And the middle button goes in the image panel name, which is the 3rd option. So that's how you would set up, and that's how each of these panel effects works. So you could go ahead and drag different panel effects in there. Now each different one that you will bring in, each one will have its options, the same options, and will need you to change those options. But we can see that the way that this works is that it's buttons nested inside of other buttons with their states removed so that they're all consistent, they're all the same, they're all blank, and then they're named using the graphic styles, and then those graphic styles that are named are then put into the appropriate places inside the widget options. Anyway, I hope this video helps and makes it a little bit more simpler, and just enables you to get on and do some really cool things with these different little animations. Thanks very much.